These are the Feeling Fruity pouches. It's a curved zipper pouch pattern that is suitable as a beginner sewing pattern or if you're more advanced. You can leave off the appliques if you want to make it more beginner friendly, or add them to make your favourite fruit. Included in the pattern are 8 different fruit designs for you to choose from in 3 different sizes, so you can choose which fruit to make at which size. Here I've just been showing you the watermelon in the coin size, and then this is the lemon in the pencil case size, and as you can see they are all lined. Finally, at the back we have the kiwi, which is in the large size, and that is the one that I'm going to be taking you through how to make it today, step by step. Hi, I'm Emma from Studio 77. Welcome. If you are new here, please do consider subscribing for fun bag making tips, tricks and tutorials. This pattern was originally part of the 77 Club. You can find links to the club and the pattern below. Any questions, comments or queries at all throughout the video, please do pop them in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So let's dive into this tutorial. So for this project, you're going to want a tape measure or ruler, pins, a lighter for fusing the ends of the zipper, and you're going to want your different marking tools. I've got a friction pen and a chalk pen, of course some scissors, and I'm using my good old Microtex 90 needles. And you're going to need a zipper as well. You can find the lengths of the zipper on the pattern instructions. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is download the pattern. You can find that in the link in the description below. On the pattern, you will find the supplies list is split into 3 according to the size that you want to do. You're also going to find in the cutting chart that it's split as well according to your size, so do check which one you are doing. For this pattern, for this tutorial, we are going to be doing the large kiwi design. You're also going to find a sheet that shows all the different applique options for your fruits, and you're going to find templates within that file as well, within the PDF. So you're going to want to make sure you're cutting out the one that is relevant to your size and to the fruit that you have chosen. So like I say, we're going to be doing the large kiwi design. So I've cut out all my templates and I'm just going to get ready to cut out all the little pieces that we need. So we've got all those little seeds there, and we've got the kind of little strips of green, and then we've got that middle piece too. There are SVGs and there are embroidery files as well, depending on your preference. Now you're also going to want to cut out all the different pieces according to the cutting chart. It's also labelled on the pattern pieces themselves. You're going to want to interface them as described, and we're going to attach the fusible foam or fleece, depending on what you're using, to the back of the pieces as described here. So we've got the back of the gusset on the outer fabric and the back of the back piece of the slice. You don't want to put any of the fusible foam or fleece on the other pieces, but you do want to interface them as described in the cutting chart. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to use the template as shown in the pattern to know where to lay out all your pieces and cut out all the individual pieces as well, like I have here. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be doing a couple of different techniques for the applique. I'm going to be doing the middle of the kiwi using a kind of traditional piecing applique using fusible webbing. And then I'm also going to be cutting out the kind of strips of the kiwi and the seeds out of a faux leather. So I'll show you the different techniques that I'm going to use for that. For the middle applique, like I say, I'm going to be using quilting weight cotton and this fusible webbing. Fusible webbing is kind of a thin layer of glue that when you heat it up, it's a bit like fabric, and when you heat it up, you're able to then fuse 2 pieces of fabric together. So I've gone ahead and cut out all of the kind of long green strips and the seeds. I've cut those out using my Cricut. And for that, I've used the denim bonding setting, and I use a fine point blade as well, rather than the rotary cutter. I just find this cuts a lot nicer. It's a bit fiddly, so you choose which setting works well for your machine and for your own faux leather or material that you're using. So now I've got all the pieces cut out, we're then going to start attaching them. So like I said, we're going to use the fusible webbing for the top piece. So I'm just going to fuse that to the back of the outer applique piece first, and then I'm going to use a friction pen to draw around it and cut out. I'm going through the paper and the webbing. Okay, then we're going to use our template to mark the middle on the front outer piece. Okay, so I'm marking the edges of that applique piece and the middle. Peeled off the paper, and then we're going to use an iron and our Teflon sheet to press that in place for a few seconds, but check your manufacturer's instructions as well. You can see that it still moves really beautifully even though that fusible glue is there. Now we also want to cut out all those shapes from our template. That's going to help us to be able to mark through in a minute. So I'm cutting out all those little green bits, all those black seeds as well, because like I say, this is going to help us in a minute. Okay, so here I am laying it on top of that outer piece that we just put that middle bit of the kiwi on, marking the ends and the tops and the bottoms of each piece with a friction pen so that I know where to put them. Now I'm going to use glue. You could use double-sided tape, you know, or you could use fusible webbing as well, but it's just a bit tricky because I'm using faux leather. You don't really want to use the fusible webbing with the iron, of course, for that. So I'm using fabric glue to hold them in place for stitching. And just want to carry on adhering all the different pieces to the top so that you can stitch them on in a minute. Now you can of course hand embroider these, or you can use the included embroidery files, or of course HTV. You can choose whichever method is preferable for you. Now I should point out as well, in this tutorial I'm only going to be doing the applique onto one side. You may want to do the applique onto both sides. If you are doing that, you're going to want to make sure that you haven't fused on the fusible foam or fusible fleece onto the back piece as well, because I mean you can do it before, but you're going to get a more quilted look. I think it's better, it's a bit easier to do all the embroidery or the applique before you have that fusible foam or fleece in place. Okay, so with that all glued in place, we're then going to go over to the machine and we're going to stitch it all together. So the best way that I find it is to use a walking foot. For this large piece at the top, I'm going to use a satin stitch, and for that I'm going to use a 0.4 width. This is on my machine, so yours may be different, and I'm going to use a 2 width, a small zigzag basically, and I'm encasing the edge. So my needle is going into the middle of the shape on the left, and then it's going just past it on the right, so that I'm catching any of those raw edges. And I'm just continuing my way all the way around until that shape is completely encased. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like at the end. And then we're going to move along to the kind of green strips, if you like. And for this, I'm moving my needle over so that it's more central, so that I can follow it a bit easier as I'm going along. And I'm going to sew about 1 millimeter from the edge of the shape all the way around. Now, what I want to do is I want to start off with a long tail. I'm going to hold the tails at the end so that it's going to start sewing. And it did do a locking stitch, which wasn't brilliant on that one. But on all of the rest of them, we want to have a long tail so that we're going to pull it through at the end. And I'll show you how I do that. Then when we get to the end of the shape, we want to pull the needle out of the fabric, and then we're going to pull the work out from underneath the machine with long tails or long ends, long threads. And then we're going to turn the work over and we're going to pull the threads through so that we can tie them on the back, and that way we don't have any threads showing on the top of the work. I'm going to tie all mine at the end, so that's why you didn't see me tie it. And then you want to continue sewing all the different shapes in the same way. So at the end, you've got all these different loose ends. You're just going to pull them all through and tie them into individual knots, so they look like this. And then we're going to repeat the same process with the little black seeds. Now obviously this is for the kiwi, so depending on the different fruit you're using, maybe different processes. Obviously you can see me changing my thread there to match as well. You're going to choose yours according to the design that you choose. your applique, we're going to take it over to the pressing mat and we're going to fuse on the foam or the fleece onto the back. Now you want to make sure you've got the glue side down, and you also want to make sure that you've got the 1/4 inch seam allowance along the top. The rest of it is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. So we're going to press it from the top, of course, because that's the best way to get to the adhesive. Because I have used the faux leather, you just want to make sure that you don't melt that. So as you can see, I'm going around that carefully with the iron as I go. Okay, then we're going to put that to one side and we're going to start working on the zipper. So we're going to need the zipper tabs, the 2 different zipper tabs, and we're going to grab our zipper. Now these are different lengths depending on the size that you're making, and you're going to place it along that short edge. Okay, you're going to match up the 2 short edges, and then we're going to pop a pin or a clip to hold that in place, and we're going to do the other end as well at the same time. So we're placing the other zipper tab on the other end. Then we're going to stitch with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to attach those 2 zipper tabs to the ends. Now when you've done that, we're going to place the zipper tab wrong sides together, and we're going to fold it and fold the other side of the seam allowance in and around the end of the zipper, and you're going to have it so that it's just past that first stitch line. Okay, so the raw edges are encased. Then we're going to stitch that in place, and it's going to be about a couple of millimetre from the edge of the fold towards the zipper tape. Then we're going to do the same with the other end. Okay, then we're going to take our applique front that we made earlier, and we're going to place our zipper on top. I'm using double-sided tape just because it is a massive game changer when you're putting in zips. You want to use the sewing version and not regular double-sided tape. And then I'm placing that centralized, and so that we've got the seam allowance at each end. That's really important that your zipper is central on that piece. Then we're going to baste along that edge within the seam allowance. So it's a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, so you want to do a few millimetres from the edge, or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Then we're going to grab our lining and we're going to place them right sides together, and we're going to use some more double-sided tape. You don't have to, but like I say, it does really help. And we're going to place the double-sided all the way along, and we're going to place the lining along that edge. Then we're going to stitch along that edge with a 1/4 inch seam. Don't forget to move your zipper out the way so that you can sew all the way along. Then we're going to fold the lining back so that the front and the lining are wrong sides together. And I like to pop a couple of clips in along that curved edge just to keep that nicely out of the way. Then we're going to top stitch a couple of millimetres from the edge along that fold. You want to make sure that you're starting and stopping 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the edge. That's really important. So you're basically starting and stopping where the zipper tape is. You see, I ran out of thread here. That was so annoying. So all I did there, I wanted to show you what to do, is I just pulled the threads through, carried on with new threads where I left off, and then just like we did with the applique, I pulled all the threads through to the back. Now here's a little trick that you can do. If you get a separate piece of thread, a different colour, and you thread it through the needle, so you've got 2 threads going through the needle, and put it into the hole where all the threads come out. pull it through so that then you've got a loop on the end. Can you see that loop there? And then you're going to place all the loose threads that you want to kind of hide into that loop. Pull the needle and the thread with the waste thread all the way through, and then you can cut your threads off, and that buries the threads really, really well, and you can never see them. It's a really neat little trick. Okay, so moving along, we're going to do exactly the same as we did before with the front lining. We're going to do that now with the back. So putting on the outer first, basting it, using our double-sided tape, of course. And then we're going to put our lining on and do our 1/4 inch seam. Just like before, we're then going to top stitch, so I'm just clipping that out of the way. And you want to make sure you stop and start again where the zipper tape starts and stops. Okay, now we're going to move on to the gussets. You want to grab your gusset piece and you want to mark the middle on both curved edges. So that's what I'm doing here. And then we're going to find the middle of the other pieces as well. So you want to mark the middle of all of the pieces, the lining and the outer. And we're going to match up, then we're going to snip all the way along the curves on the gusset. Now you want to snip within the seam allowance and you want to cut all the way around. Just little snips, and this is going to help you move that curve to fit the other curve. And we're going to pin or clip, if you're using faux leather or vinyl, we're going to clip all the way around. I do find that pins are a bit easier, especially if you're new to curves. They really do hold it in place. But obviously if you're using a faux leather, then you can't do that. And you want to match up on the ends of the gusset. You want to match that up with the seam allowance on the front of the pouch. You want to get this right because it feels a bit weird, because obviously we've top stitched it, so it might fold a bit weirdly, so you want to make sure that that is evened out. And then you can even out the rest of the seam going along, pinning and pushing it out so that it fits. Okay, then we're going to stitch along that edge with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can see here I am using a zipper foot. This does help when you're going around those curves, especially if you're using fusible foam. It helps you to get really nice and close to the edge. Having the fusible foam or fleece out of the seams does give you a kind of stitch line, so that helps too. Now when you start, you want to make sure you're starting 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the edge. You'll find it naturally wants to do that anyway because the zipper's in the way. And you can either stitch over your pins. It looks like I'm going super fast. I'm not. I'm going quite slowly over those pins, or take them out as you go. And then you're going to stop again 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, then we are going to stitch the other side to it. So the back of the pouch to the other curve of the gusset. Exactly the same as before, matching up the middle notch, easing it around, and then stitching it with 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Don't forget to start and stop again 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, we're going to take those pins out, and then we're going to move along to doing the same with the lining. So we're going to grab the gusset and either the front or the back, and we're going to match up those notches. But of course, first we're going to make those little snips all the way along. Exactly the same as we did before. Match up those middle marks and pin it all around. And again, when it comes to those ends of the gussets, you just want to make sure that that matches up with the edge or the end of the curved seam. Stitch that again in place. Same seam allowance, 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch, and again you're starting and stopping 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch from the edge. You can see here I'm doing the other side of the curve of the gusset with the back of the lining now. Now you want to make sure when you do the back that you're going to leave a turning gap. So that's why I've put these big pins in, so that tells me as I'm sewing, don't sew beyond those pins, leave the hole. Now, what you want to do is you want to grab those ends of the gussets and you want to sew them together. So you can feel the edge of the fabric as you sew. You want to make sure you're not catching the zipper as you do that. So I'm just, again, you want to use a zipper foot and you want to get as close as you can. 1 centimetre seam allowance. You're not stitching over the zipper, as you can see. And you want to do that on both sides. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to trim that seam allowance to go around the curve. So I'm using pinking shears here. You could just snip little triangles out of it if you want to help it ease around. But as you can see, I'm using pinking shears. And you want to do that on all of the curves, except for when you come to that turning hole. You don't want to snip the seam allowance of that turning hole. As you can see here, I haven't snipped into that turning hole seam allowance. Then we're going to reach through the hole and we're going to grab the whole bag and turn it the right way out. I don't know if you saw there, but the fusible foam had come away in places a little bit. That's fine, we can just press that at the end with a towel inside if we want to make sure that that's really nicely adhered. And as you're doing this, you want to pop out the ends of the zipper tabs so that they lay really nice and proud. Push it all out, make it look really nice. And we're going to reach through, grab the lining, and then we're going to close our turning hole. You're going to fold the seam allowance in towards each other. Again, it's a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just folding that in and I'm going to pin it, and then you can either hand sew or machine sew that closed. And I'm just stitching about 1 millimetre or 2 from the edge, about 1/8 of an inch. Congratulations, you've finished your Feeling Fruity pouch. You could give it a bit of a press if you want to, just to even it out. Don't worry though, you don't have to stop there. Check out the video coming up on the screen right now, because I think you are going to love the dinosaur pencil case. Now you've mastered those curves, you could really take on a curved zip. Don't be put off by curved zips, you've got this. Thanks so much for watching. Please do consider subscribing, and I'll see you on the next tutorial.